So I have to create pleasure, and the really tough task to go on after Stefan and after lunch. So the first thing I'd like all of you to do is actually get up. I know you've just been sitting, but get up, because I know you're all just getting into this lunch slump. And first of all, acknowledge something really amazing. I mean, we always talk about the energy in the room, but just look around you and acknowledge that the Bio Foundation actually did something really amazing, which is bring people together from all over the world. It's one of the very few events actually in this like change maker space where you have people from almost all continents here. So a big round of applause to all of you in the Bio Foundation. You can keep standing if you feel better like that, or sit down, whatever you feel. And boom, everyone is back down. So I think Stefan pretty much already gave the introduction to this session, but just reflecting on what we heard yesterday and also today, we all know that financing is one of the lifelines. The other big one that was also addressed a lot today was the human capital, the people actually working on this. And we had this really good session yesterday on innovative finance in practice. We've had some breakouts, and it always came up that the traditional ways of financing entrepreneurs is not really helpful for social enterprises for various reasons. So today in this session, we'd like to talk about a few different ways of doing it. And we'd like to start from making it a bit informative, going to hear what these three amazing people do. Then make it interactive, because we know it's after lunch and we've heard a lot of frontal, like really inspiring information, but we want you to get engaged. So please don't be shy, please speak up, please ask us questions, but also share your experiences. This is really important, and build on the energy in the room. And finally, we hope we all walk away with a little bit more inspiration to actually try out new ways of financing, and for the entrepreneurs to speak up and actively demand that we funders provide the right financing to you. So with that, and without further ado, I'd like to give it over to Eleni at first. Tell us a bit more about what you do with WeShare Forward, and what is this community of practice that everyone kind of hears about and would like to know more about.
Thank you so much, Christian. And just I want to say it has been an amazing 2 days. I spoke to many of you. We exchanged ideas and, ideas for funding, but also non-financial support. And I think that's very important that we keep on having this human connection that Mark mentioned from Moving Worlds earlier on. So I'm the managing director of WeShare Forward Foundation. We are a philanthropic foundation based in the Netherlands. Yes, we are the one that Stefan mentioned about the tax difficulties, which we overcame, by the way. I will explain a bit. And what we do is we support early stage social entrepreneurs and students to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and we work on health, education, and regenerative agriculture, sustainable food systems. We do that in, let's say, innovative ways. So we provide paid forward grants. We give a grant to the social entrepreneur, and once they're successful, we ask them to help another social entrepreneur. It's really a moral commitment. It's a moral, not obligation, but actually an inspiring way to connect and partner with other social entrepreneurs and help them, because if you give them some funding, you will also give them your knowledge and your network. So this is what we do, and we realized that we cannot do this alone. So we were in one of these amazing conferences together with Stefan from Bayer Foundation and Christian from Boehringer Ingelheim, and later on also with the Dean and other colleagues. And we realized that we are looking at the same pipeline, the same social entrepreneurs, and we are doing it in silos. So we thought, why don't we do this really crazy thing called working together? So we actually decided to start looking into the deals together, and we brought other impact funders. We are now 25 impact funders working together on access to healthcare in sub-Saharan Africa. And we have done 3 co-funding deals together. One of them is actually, or is around in the room. So Elucid, maybe you met them during the coffee breaks. And I will explain in more detail how we do it. But the most important is that we actually decided that it doesn't matter so much about the different agendas and the different requirements. It matters to help the social entrepreneurs the best way we can and combining our resources. And this is funding, non-financial support, and funding can mean not just grants, but also different types of capital, so blended finance. And in the case of Elucid, Christian, if I have one more minute to explain, basically in the case of Elucid, we received the Bayer Foundation funding. Anesvat Foundation joined us as well, and Wizard Forward Foundation provided a small amount. And we pooled all that funding and provided it to Elucid combined with combined impact outcomes and reporting and combined non-financial support that the other members could provide. So the most important here is that we actually pulled some funds together. And because of that, Elucid followed up with other funders. We unlocked funding from other colleagues from other foundations. And I think this is the most important of the community of practice in health, to be catalytic.
Thank you for sharing that, Eleni. And Edine is another partner in crime and impact, I would say.
Yes.
Especially impact.
In the business of impact.
Exactly, you can build up on that.
And absolutely, and thank you, Christian. And of course, first I would like to start with thanking Bayer Foundation. Thanking certainly because I have been taking notes actually since yesterday and actually enjoyed even the evening before with some of the discussions with you, Andrea, and also with Pong and with the team. Of course, I know Stefan, and I would like to applaud you for the inspiring learnings and achievements that you have reached throughout your journey. And of course, I know Stefan very well because we connect regularly. But all I can say is that, Monica, you have a great team here. And I would like also to add to that is actually, of course, we heard many acronyms these days. And I told Christian I will add one just a minute ago. I will add one to your list. And that is actually triple C. Of course, the Chief Catalyst already mentioned a number of things yesterday. And it was for me also a very inspiring session. But the triple C that I would like to add to you is actually connect, convene, and catalyze. And that's exactly what you are and what you do. You are a connector, so actually, and that you can just look here around, but of course also throughout the experience that we have with you. And also convener, and we have seen the magic, and I heard actually also in different places where people talking about signing something or working on things, and that's amazing. And of course also catalyst, looking also what you have been achieving, and of course the awards that from yesterday, and certainly more to come. And for that also thank you to make us part of your journey. We really get inspired by that. And I come from a similar, let's say, environment. Philips Foundation, of course, I'm not here to talk about Philips Foundation, to be honest. So I love the statement actually to leave the logos and the egos and even the shoes outside. So and have more indeed an informed discussion on how because we should not forget why we are here. And we are here for actually the impact and for the global good and the things that we would like to achieve together. And we also came a long way, and we need to recognize, I mean, that sometimes we learn the hard way. So we also come a long way actually also from grant making. So Philips Foundation was established 10 years ago to also centralize the corporate social responsibility of the company and make it more transparent and impactful. And we learned the hard way that actually purely financial transactions or donations don't work. And that's why I would like to add, even if that the session is talking about innovative financing, we should not forget that there's actually a number of things. And the reason why I said also that I was making notes, because I want also to connect to the discussion between Andrea and also Mark earlier this morning. And yes, absolutely. I mean, we have been looking to our partners and also asking them regularly, because if we look into investment and impact investing, one of the key questions we often ask is the use of funds, right? Or the needed support. And often, I mean, the capital is just a currency that needs to help the investee or the social enterprise to achieve their goals, and that contain a number of things that can also be translated into non-financial support. So if we ask our partners, they always come up actually with human resource, sales, so I do agree with Mark earlier, and of course also access to capital. I mean, those three, they're always on the top, and then of course, based on what they do, then you will hear things like quality and regulatory, you will hear things about technology, etc. So that come indeed in. And I think this is very important, and the reason why I mentioned that is that when we look into this as key success factors for social enterprise, so to succeed, then you can already actually give in, right, so that you cannot do it alone. And there where I like to call one second one, so I only give you two takeaways. So the triple C for buyer, and it takes a village to raise a child. And that's what it's about actually, because you cannot do this indeed alone. We don't believe we can do it alone, and I don't believe that someone else can do it alone. And I think the only way indeed to do that is on how we can indeed team up and address the different indeed challenges within this space. And I name one example, Christian, and then pass so that we can move on to some interaction. And I hope I'm provoking and unlocking also questions. And the example that I would like indeed also to mention is in Access Safia, because we share portfolios, indeed we share pipelines, we share the mission and the ambition and the passion. And for Access Safia, for example, as a venture that tries to make healthcare accessible in slums in Nairobi for the poorest, let's say, in the community where there is absolutely a belief that there is also a sustainable model that can be built, it's quite a tough exercise to raise capital. But actually through this collaboration, we have seen then the possibility that it's possible. It's possible to unlock grants, to unlock equity investment, to unlock impact-linked financing, so to unlock also indeed the equity investment that we did have put in it, but next to that also the non-financial support. I mean, in a venture that is very high risk to a venture that could close its round and get the financial support, but also where we look, of course, to everyone in the room, how we can also team up and put the hands together to make this a success. Because it doesn't end in the financial instrument, and we need to keep that in our mind.
Thanks a lot, Edine. Gia, maybe you want to build up on that.
Definitely, and I definitely don't want to, fall in the same trap and saying thank you to buyer, which I do want to say, and just want to say that it's been so refreshing, to be honest, to be here, where you're in a space where, as Chris said earlier, you combine both the entrepreneurs and you combine the funders and you combine the ecosystem partners, where you tell, and then I'm spitting you, the entrepreneurs, to the funders as well, what it is that you need. What is the thing that is holding you back from growth? And that is very refreshing because we don't come across those types of events. So thank you to specifically Andrea and to Stefan as well for inviting me to be part of the family for even if it's a day or two. I just want to start by saying that for those of you that don't know DRK Foundation or fully Drapers Richards Kaplan Foundation, we find, fund and support highly scalable, innovative social enterprises that are ultimately helping those most vulnerable. We have a venture capital background as well, so we have that legacy that is determining the way that we do structure our support to social enterprises. We fund globally, we fund both non-profits and for-profits. We don't split the house, as they say. So we can provide both equity investments, for example, and we can provide unrestricted, and I know that some people won't glory at unrestricted funding to the organizations in the portfolio. And just to give some very basic parameters, we have supported over the last 22 years roughly 240 organizations, so we don't do that many deals a year, with both financial capital, but we also provide, and which is actually the most important piece of the puzzle, the non-financial support. So we do combine those efforts, and it's actually the most important piece of providing that rigorous support, which is where the VC background comes to fruition. So we take a very systematic approach when it comes to building the organization. So we don't necessarily do project funding. We look at the organization as a whole to see how can we help you along the way of growth and how can we mature the organization with you. And that VC market discipline, I almost want to say, comes to fruition in many different aspects of the work. So one of the things that we say we're good at is the due diligence. So determining what is the pathway to growth here, how can you achieve impact at scale? And for example, as well, specifically to the nonprofits as well, how can you have a healthy earned revenue stream as well? How can you build up to that to ultimately sustain yourself? Because also DRK or any funder in your pipeline, most of them will not be around in 10 years' time, for example. So the differentiating factor for DRK specifically is we look at the organization as a whole, and we hope you take us actually on the journey to maturity and throughout the 3 years that we remained with you. So that's just a little tiny overview of what it is that we do. Half of our portfolio at the moment is serving the Global South, which is also something that I want to mention. And specifically for those in the room, the health portfolio is definitely the biggest part of our portfolio as well. So there's lots of amazing entrepreneurs that I was already able to meet over the last 2 days, which I'm very happy about. So that's just a little bit of what I wanted to say from our model, how we differentiate. And what I want to reiterate, I'm not here to say DRK is doing it the way, or we are the sole way that everyone should be doing it, because reinstating what my colleague here said as well, we need all sorts of capital, we need all sorts of non-financial support, and we just do it in one way, and it's proven to be successful, but it's also not for everyone. So we do need it all together. So I just want to reiterate, it's not a pitch, it's just showcasing our tradecraft, sharing what it is that we do.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Now it's up to all of you here in the room. If we had a lot of people speak up in the smaller sessions yesterday, does anyone feel comfortable to grab the mic? I think they're going around and share with us. Let's start from the social entrepreneurs. What have been some of your experience along the way on your funding journey? What is it that's worked well, but also what are some of the things you're still missing that you'd like to see more of? Anyone? Otherwise, I have to volunteer. Thank you, Imbola.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. And I'm quite encouraged by the drive to collectively invest in us and support the work we do. One of the things we discovered is that we have a very opaque, underdeveloped network for pharmacies in Nigeria and in many parts of Africa. We have developed the technology that would help them. We have spent years with capacity building. They understand they need to grow. If they grow, we will do much more. We can work with the pharmacies to do much more. But we're looking for funding to support that growth. When we speak to different fund providers, it seems it's not yet connected with them, because we can't show the dollars of how they will make money immediately. Ultimately, they will. We're just wondering, is there a sort of fund out there to support our work to help the pharmacies so that they can ultimately serve the big pharma players and serve the small social enterprises, as well as us in Nigeria and in other countries we want to operate in? Is this clear?
Nadine, an idea?
Yeah. Happy to take that one up indeed. And I think we had a brief discussion also just before this session about local manufacturing, but there are indeed a number of activities that can be done in that space. Being a non-pharma expert to start with, so I need to put that disclaimer coming from a company like Philips and Philips Foundation Impact Investments. But I have seen indeed a number of models, and I do believe in the need, absolutely. And I do also believe that there are opportunities for support there as well. What I have seen indeed working, and I think, Christian, I'm just mentioning to our recent discussion with one of our investees, where we both of us actually invest in, and where we look that there is a high operational capital needed for many clinicians and clinical providers that they need to allocate to commodities and to the pharma. Sometimes it can take up, up to between the 50 to 70% of the revenue that is being generated. And there are models indeed on how to do that effectively, and I think that is very important indeed to explore. So explore from both sides. So what is the intervention and what is actually then the opportunity space that we need to consider to support, so from one side, and how to unburden also the clinician to focus on where they're good at, and at the same time ensuring actually access to the medication. And there are a couple of initiatives that we can connect to. But happy indeed to have that discussion offline, but certainly also looking to my colleague who is moderating this session, because this is a recent topic for us.
Very Thank you for raising the question. Another one over there.
Hi. One of the things that came up in the finance group yesterday, just to build on, is the challenge sometimes of depth of impact versus reach. As Producers Direct, we're not-for-profit and we're looking at different revenue models. And one of the things that we're finding a real challenge is the differences that different funders have in their perspectives on return on investment and the different calculations around that. So I was wondering, in terms of collaborations, do you all have conversations about that and sort of, possibilities around aligning on those metrics? Because at the moment we're calculating it a bit differently for the different partners who are funding us, which gets ourselves a little bit confused because it doesn't give us a clear kind of line of sight to actually how to target one priority.
Maybe I can jump in. I think the most important here, and especially for our community of practice, is that beyond the co-funding, we do knowledge sharing. And knowledge sharing is all about, as you said, really starting to align, because I completely understand you. And I see what is happening in the sector, talking to different philanthropic funders, but not only. And the transfer of knowledge is not only important because we need to align, but it's also important because we need to capture that. And the ecosystem needs to start aligning. So, of course, we can align, or we'll try to align between the 25 funders. But what we want to do is to capture that in a playbook, or anyway, a blueprint that we can share with the ecosystem. Actually, this is something that we have in the making. We have been documenting the collaborative work we are doing. And as I always say to my colleagues, peers, my dream is very much that this will be replicated many times. And it's already happening. There is another similar alliance called Youth Alliance, working on youth empowerment, different funders there, and some others coming up. And we are very happy that we will also be involved in the climate and health initiative of Bayer Foundation. So actually, it's happening. Just give us some time, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe just as a perspective from one of the 25, so actually also for us that it took a couple of years before we started also, let's say, putting the knowledge together and also sharing it. So just actually so in our existence of 10 years as foundation, Impact Investment Vehicle is just 3 years. So we, 2 years ago, we launched our knowledge hub. We call it a knowledge hub, and probably our numbers much smaller than what we are talking here about. But for the 350 programs that we deployed, so we started indeed to put those learnings together and make them also indeed accessible. And I think it starts with us, with the 25 individually before we can even do any aggregation. And as I told you, it took us a couple of years before we started even looking into how we get our learnings, and now also in the phase where we make them also accessible and available. And also the way how the venture philanthropy space also works is not always that homogeneous, or let's say connected. So also the learnings are quite difficult to connect. So it takes a bit of time before you start build thematic areas where you have enough learnings that are transferable and scalable.
Yeah. I just quickly want to add on this topic as well that indeed the COPS, or the Community of Practice for Health, is one way in which the funders are amongst each other collaborating. And just to follow up from a session from yesterday, sometimes as especially early stage organizations, they just want to create the biggest pipeline of fundraising that they could, especially in the early stage, because they just want to go for everything, which makes them sometimes go for somewhat mismatched funders as well. So it's going to be more difficult to come to fruition. Whereas if you have 1, 2, 3 donors even in your corner that are fully aligned, you would be amazed how many conversations, and I mean this in a good way, we have behind your back with each other. And I know with Bayer as well, the amount of times that we've shared portfolio, that we've shared pipeline, it's truly a thing where again, our pipeline mostly comes from, which ultimately become a portfolio organization. And when we, for example, and I can only speak to our example within DRK, the organizations that have entered our portfolio, and we've been tracking these for the last 3 years as well, in follow-on funding opportunities. With the organizations that we've supported, they collectively, and these are all leveraged wins from the portfolio, I want to reiterate, collectively they accumulated 1.5 billion in the last 3 years through our 80 plus donor partners, through the 400 follow-on funders that we have a whole team that engages with them because we are there to help you. And the same goes for my colleagues as well. We try to make the connection, and this completely covers for Bayer as well. They are there to help you and connect you to other funders. And that is one way in which we try to do it. And from yesterday as well, one thing is that when you are looking also in the impact investing space, for example, there's almost kind of this subcategory that is comprising of impact investors and impact first investors, where indeed some conversations start with ROI first, like what's your return on investment, what return can I get here? And I can say for certain, and again, I can only speak to DRK, we only care about the impact. If we get our principal back, like that's the only thing that we ever strive for. And we invest with a philanthropic fund. So every cent goes back into the fund fully and will support future entrepreneurs. And sometimes we also say that if we get like inflation, we just throw a party somewhat with the entrepreneurs, because ultimately it is about the impact. And so picking the pipeline, picking the donors that you're going for and seeing what their background is and what their networks are, that can sometimes enable more than the ticket size that specific funder can leverage for you.
I have a feeling everyone will be at your door at the end of this. But yeah, I want to reiterate that it really just takes one dedicated supporter, like the Bayer Foundation, like one of us or anyone else that's here in the room today, to unlock a lot more people.
Yeah.
I think it's the classical network effect, right? You just talk to the right person and they will know the right people again, and then
Catalytic.
it branches out, exactly. I saw another question over there.
Yeah, I think one thing that we learned from our funding journey is that funding is not funding, right? There is funding that can be rather unrestricted, long-term, results-oriented, trust-based, unbureaucratic, where like $30,000 of that can be 100 times more valuable than 200,000 of heavily restricted, short-term, bureaucratic bullshit money. So I think that that's a very, very important lesson. And seeing the people here in the room and the conversations I've had over the first 1.5 days, here's a lot of like enlightened funders that understand how you should fund in the 21st century. But the reality is, it's not everybody like that. And the dinosaurs are still like in the majority. And what I would like to see and what I would like to challenge you to do more in the future is use your voices, use your power to be the ninja spies in the traditional system and push them harder to align with the needs of social entrepreneurs. And what we did here in Germany last year, because we were so frustrated to see like how funding restrictions had not even softened during COVID. With the Social Entrepreneurship Network Germany, we developed something called 5 Guiding Principles for Funding Social Innovation in the 21st Century. That was now signed by about 150 leading German nonprofit social enterprises. Happy to share that with you. It would be interesting to see what you think about these 5 principles. And maybe some of these are things that you can take into future conversations with foundation partner, other funders, in just saying this is what the community wants, this is what you should work on if you really want to be a good partner.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, and definitely share it with us. I think the industry is moving in that space. Earlier this year we were talking about the community of practice as well at Phoenix Impact Capital, which is a conference in Amsterdam, completely focused on institutional investors, really big shots to billion-dollar pension funds and all that. And I want to also get back to your point, not every funder is made for funding small startups, right? Like there's different stages. We did it yesterday in a session as well, and those huge pension funds, they need to somehow keep the money in it, right? I mean, I always have to personally say, I fully believe in social entrepreneurship, but I would not like to wake up with 65 and have my pension fund manager tell me, look, we invested all your money in social impact. You created all the impact in the world that you want. So What's happening a lot in the industry now is that parts of that, what the funds are working with, are being moved further and further downstream towards funding your enterprises. But there's a lot of intermediaries in between as well, and it's usually small parts of it. But I think in France it's been going on for a while, where up to 30% of the endowment of pension funds are allowed to be invest in social impact. And I think maybe in the Netherlands there's some really innovative ways as well.
Yeah.
So it's happening, but it's happening slowly, and we need that. We need these initiatives of all of you to really speak up and say, look, this is not working for me. We need to keep moving here.
Yeah.
But
And I think
go ahead.
Please.
No, go ahead.
I think we also need to make a separation between venture capital and private equity that is trying to move towards impact, and actually venture philanthropy or donors and philanthropists that try to take a small move towards also impact investing and reaching also to social entrepreneurs. I think there is a huge difference in here that we need also to see with our eyes. I think that is very important. And as much as the entrepreneurs are trying to also see how they can organize themselves, or at least see where they can find synergies, because it was amazing yesterday to see in one panel questions and answers at the same time. And I think that is what we try also indeed more to achieve here, also to organize on how we can support the entrepreneurs in a better manner, to build on each other's due diligence. We don't need to redo. I don't want to lead in every due diligence process. I'm happy to use the one that is being done by my colleagues. So how do we indeed make sure that we provide with the right support? I think that is very important. I'm very much interested indeed, so also in what you mentioned with respect to the bureaucracy, because that is exactly what we need to remove. We need to keep everyone in the place where they're the best at. And that is actually where we need indeed to team up, absolutely.
Yeah. And going back to your comment, Thurston, I think it's very important for the ecosystem to understand that catalytic capital, and especially philanthropic capital, is quite shrinking at the moment. So let's say we collectively said we're going to collaborate. We need the support of other bigger funders to match our catalytic funding, to match it. So if we can mobilize 1 million to be matched with another 1 million from one of the development agencies or one of the bigger endowment foundations, so that we can amplify our efforts and support more of you, or in depth. And I think this is slowly happening. We're trying to unlock more capital with our smaller amounts. And this will be very important, because if we can channel more capital into catalytic capital, we can de-risk more of you, so that you can grow and go to the next stage, where other impact investors that will have also more financial returns can pick up and support you for long term. The key here is to be able to actually learn from you, understand what you need, and collectively to also use our voice, as you mentioned, with the bigger funders. I think this is a power we have, and we have the responsibility to use it. With great power comes responsibility, as they say. This is something we are looking in the different alliances, and also hopefully more between us in the future, that we can talk also to the policymakers as a collective voice, so that they can learn what is needed for more private philanthropic impact capital to be unlocked, and also that we learn what they need, so that we can be catalytic and they can also fund you. Because, for example, the European Commission has significant funds for some areas. Different development agencies have significant funds. We can talk with them and actually understand what they need, but also that we share with them what our portfolio companies need and what we need to be able to channel catalytic funding in specific thematic areas.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably I had to be maybe a bit more clear when I mentioned also Access Afia, Eleni. So actually where with 500,000, so we were able to unlock 1.5 million. So actually that is, which is very important actually to mention, which means that it resulted into the 2 million that Access Afia needed. And actually all the parties have contributed in it. So of course we share Forward Foundation, of course from Bayer Foundation, the UBS Optimus Foundation, Philips Foundation, Sync. So there are a number of actors, and then later on an additional 500,000 from Grand Challenges Canada. So that is what we would like indeed to see. So, and that is how you create a snowball.
And maybe if I may call up on one more example, Sitara, you've also set up a very successful community of funders, I would say, and actually unlocked quite some public funding in it as well. Because we're getting close to the end of the session, but I would like to highlight this as well.
Sure. We're the Swiss Capacity Building Facility, and we only fund the financial inclusion space. So we've heard lots of great examples outside of that and some inside that. But we really fund with 3 instruments. So returnable grants to scale inclusive finance solutions for low-income populations. And then we also fund enterprises with returnable grants and impact-linked finance. So we do sort of work within the continuum, and that's where the session yesterday we sort of built on. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah, maybe. Absolutely. And if I'm allowed to name some of the actors, it's the Swiss Development Corporation that is a big funder of you.
Yeah.
And then we have a lot of the funders, the reinsurers and insurance companies that we all think of usually as very conservative, actually bring in money to unlock these really...
Well, what they do is actually bring expertise. So similar to Mark, you've been mentioned a lot today, Mark from Moving Worlds. We're a public-private association, and we have the Swiss Re's of the world, so insurance companies, impact investors, practitioners, so in inclusive finance. We also have, who else do we have? Insurance companies, sorry, I already said that. Pharma, that's what I was missing. So we have different types of organizations, and we support, from a network perspective, institutions. So, and we've been historically funded primarily by the Swiss Development Corporation. And so really the expertise that comes in, so if you imagine, I'll give you an example, because it's easier. There was an organization that we supported. Their name is Okomali. They came to us. They provide index insurance. They came to us and said, look, we would like to scale this product. They came to us. We funded them for technical assistance. When they came to us, they had something like 400 clients. They went through our application process. Our application process is really fast. If you get a complete application, we can put funding in your hands within 6 weeks. We're unique in that way. And what they benefited from was, for example, the Swiss Development Corporation put them in touch with the ministries locally so that they could actually overcome some of the regulatory hurdles. And then one of our members, Allianz, basically put them in touch with farmer cooperatives so that they could scale. And by the end of the time that we funded them, they had reached 10,000 clients. So that gives you, just as an example, the type of intervention that we provide.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Sitara. I think we're getting close to the end of the session, so I'd like all the panelists to give, what's the one thing you want everyone to take away, and then I'll try to also say just one more word and we wrap it up. Shane, do you want to start?
Yeah, definitely. I think from what I've also heard from the room, there's strength in numbers, and there's strength in numbers from the entrepreneurial point of view. So please keep telling us what it is that you need, because be honest with us. Honest to God, that's what I want to ask you as well. Be honest with us what it is that you need, and don't be afraid to give, the politically correct answer. I mean, be polite, but give us the answer that is truly what it is that we can help you with. Because even if we are not the right funder for you, we may know someone else that could. So keep talking to us. From a funder point of view, again, there's strength in numbers with the community of practice and health, even the partners that those partners then also have. There's a great network of funders that do talk to one another, that do want to try and co-fund or collaborate in other ways when it comes to the non-financial support. So I would say that's the one thing that I'm coming off these 2 days of, that there is a unity, there is a community, there is collaboration, and there is a great strength in this community and this family that is the Bayer Foundation as well, and the awardees and the portfolio organizations. So thank you, Bayer, also for setting this amazing scene. And again, just tell us what it is that you need. That would be my last message.
Yeah, thanks, Shane, and I fully agree with that, and I would like just to extrapolate actually a bit further on that. So I fully echo what you just shared, and maybe the only thing to add to that is that from each of us actually to look at it, that there is, if we talk about ecosystem play and about it takes a village to raise a child, which I would like to reiterate again. So it's that there is an upstream and a downstream in an ecosystem, which means actually from what you try to reach, but also who others can also engage with you to make that also happen. So from both sides. And then every one of us has a role to play, and there can be financial, but also non-financial. And let's not forget that specific part. So everyone can contribute in a way or another. And that's the same actually when we look indeed to a child. That is actually we look at it as our future, our global good. So how do we also make sure we create that safe and healthy environment? And that's the same, I look actually also to something that we would like to do good together in a social enterprise. So that's actually building that ecosystem and certainly being a facilitator, not to claim it, because none of us can claim it, but more facilitating and nourishing that it becomes self-sustaining.
Tapping on all my previous peers, of course, I completely agree with all of you. I think one thing, if we can remember today, is that collaboration, we need for sure collaboration between the funders. We need also collaboration between you. We are addressing complex challenges at the moment, which need all the hands, as Edin said, everybody to work together. Let's work together on complete geographies, on complete thematics, so that we can also pool and unlock funds to create lasting change, system change. So I think from today onwards, we need to just work together, inform each other and learn from each other. And let's try to have this lasting system change. And thank you for having us today.
I think I'll leave it at that. That's perfectly fair.
Thank you.